Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eComOne, and welcome to episode 163. In this episode, I speak with Erika Varangouli, Head of SEO Branding at SEMRush. Now, SEMRush is a product and a tool and a suite of tools that we've used here at the agency for well over 10 years, with multiple accounts and multiple users that use it pretty much every day. So, I was absolutely chuffed to bits to get Erika on the pod and talk all things SEO strategy. Erika's opinion on AI and the right way to approach it. There's a few things here might surprise you, and there might be a few things here that you're doing very wrong. And then 3 things that every e-commerce company should be looking at in terms of their SEO. Very actionable insights here. And the big one, winning budget for SEO. Sometimes can be challenging to go back to the owners, the shareholders, to win budget for SEO. So breaking that down and how you can take sort of bite-sized projects to prove concepts and then ideally then win additional budget. And of course, so much more in this one. So if you enjoy this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. So you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Welcome to the podcast, Erika. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Richard. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, no problem at all. I've been looking forward to this one. We've been huge fans of SEMRush for, I'm trying to think how long we've had an account for, or personally in the agency, I think it's over 10 years. I got the shares when they launched a couple of years ago, so I'm really looking forward to having a good chat with you and talk all things SEMRush. But before we do that, I think it'd be great for you to introduce yourself, how you got into the world of e-commerce and how you got the role at SEMRush as well.
The role at SEMRush was a funny thing because I had just started a new role like a month or so before in a startup, like a SaaS startup, and I got a call from one of their recruiters. And for me, up until that point, when I went into a new job, I was kind of like diving deep into it. But then when I was kind of like, are you serious? You're from SEMRush? I thought someone was, because I've been known in my previous roles to be a huge advocate of SEMRush. So I was like, I could not believe SEMRush just rang me. So it was a bit of a, fan moment of like, oh my God, I cannot believe the rock star I've always loved kind of pointed at me at the gig. So yeah, we then started like talking, went through the normal process, but they approached me for a role at the time. And I felt like this was too good to just miss because I had just started something, which was great, by the way. But I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's SEMRush. So up until a point in my life, I started as a journalist, but then I wanted to transition to online marketing, and that also happened when I moved from Greece to the UK. So I thought that's a perfect opportunity for me to start fresh on all fronts. So those were my first roles, were all in marketing agencies, right? So we had a lot of like e-commerce clients, smaller, bigger brands like retailers, all the spectrum. And that's how I started kind of getting that experience working in e-commerce, and then obviously moving into more roles, working with more. Yeah. And then came SEMRush, where I've been for the last 4 years. So
yeah. I think that's great. I think it's always nice to have guests on that have, they've worked agency side, client side, but then obviously now sort of head of SEO branding at SEMRush. So obviously seen quite a lot of different things and approaching I believe you said there, and my notes tell me that you're approaching that 4-year point, which is quite some time, isn't it? So well done, firstly. So do you feel that what else is on your sort of bucket list to achieve whilst in the position at SEMRush?
Oh wow! How long do we have? I think for me, because this is also a new role, right? I've been in this role for like a month now, and it's a new role overall for SEMRush as well. It wasn't a thing before. So one of the things that I've always loved about SEMRush, even before joining, right, was the mission that we're on. And that mission is to kind of democratize marketing, right? Make it accessible to business owners, to marketers of all levels of expertise, right? And accessible means, something that you can really get value from, also accessible financially, for example, right? And that is for me, that is a strong mission. So for example, how I work towards it or what goals I'm setting for myself, they're always connected to that. It's like, what am I doing that is making marketing more accessible, is making people more invested in it. It makes them feel more confident when they're doing their marketing. Like, a vast majority of businesses out there are small businesses, solopreneurs, right? People who are asked to be everything from sales to customer support, to marketing to development. So the idea of giving them the tools and the knowledge they need to do a good job and to see their businesses thrive, I think that for me is the whole kind of bucket. And then that kind of breaks down into smaller goals or initiatives on how do we empower people to do just that with what we create in terms of marketing, what we create in terms of tools and product, what our customer teams are doing. So it goes forward, I think.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think, marketing managers, we're probably talking about there, and more specifically on this podcast, e-commerce marketing managers. It's a tough gig, isn't it? It's a tough role when you've got to try and juggle the 20 different, whether that's running events, to Google Analytics, GA4, we haven't upgraded, 6 months ago, or, EAAT, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But obviously, you guys, you've got, I think, is it 15 tools now? 50? Do you call them tools? 15 different areas within the business on different sort of opportunities there to help build that.
It's over 50, actually. It's 50. And then we also have like the App Center, right? And in the App Center, we have dedicated apps to do specific things, right? Because we understand that someone who may want to be, for example, creating videos or helping their videos rank on YouTube, they might not be interested in e-commerce, for example, at the same time. So we're building tons. But in terms of the challenges you mentioned, I think e-commerce is extremely hard. For me, that's a good thing, like working into something that's very challenging, but it still remains like challenging. And you see those challenges being very different based on whether you are like a small, let's say, retailer versus like you're managing a huge e-commerce site, right? And everyone has kind of like a basis for the issues they need to address and what they need to build. But how that scales, how you scale your approach and be efficient with that, it is something that as you grow, you need to be addressing more and more and more. So yeah, definitely empathize with a lot of things.
So, I mean, believe it or not, there are still people out there that are maybe need convincing about the value of investing in SEO when it comes to their e-commerce store. What would you say to those guys? That they may be on the fence a little bit about investing in SEO. We don't see that too much now because we're dealing with bigger and bigger merchants and clients within our agency behind the podcast. But believe it or not, there are still people out there that are the naysayers of SEO. They're not believers, when it comes to e-commerce. But what would you say to those guys? How important is it to invest in an e-com strategy?
I understand. And when I was starting, yes, whenever I worked with e-commerce clients, let's say at the start of my career, that was like over 10 years ago, by the way, it wasn't a wildly popular idea, right? And at the time, I was also like a lot of content marketing. So that was even worse because SEO to a degree resonated with the technical side of things, right? But what I will say here, I see also like we have done a few studies in the past couple of years about like e-commerce and the state of e-commerce and how people shop, for example, online, right? And what we've seen is that from 2019, 2020, so through COVID era up to now, the ad spend has tripled, right?
Yeah.
That is a massive investment. Like it has tripled over time, but so has traffic. Traffic has tripled as well. Then if you break this down further, though, what you see is, for example, that traffic, I think over 80% of it is direct. Right? Direct has to do with like building your brand. And by building your brand, I don't mean like, okay, you're popular on social media. I mean like, what does the brand entail is like what your customers or potential customers experience when they come on your site, right? How often do they get to see you when they're searching for something. How likely are they? Like, they're probably on their phones. Like 70% of that traffic we saw is on mobile. So it went up for desktop during COVID, but then gradually the last 1-2 years, we saw it coming back to kind of like a normal that we were seeing before, which is like over 70% of it, I think, is on mobile. What is your connection with like the needs that people want to cover by searching to buy something, right? Do you give them the information? Like, we shop all the time online, right? What am I interested in when I want to buy? Like, I was looking for a waterproof for my daughter. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand if it had like 3 layers. So will she be good to wear it in the winter or just now, right? I couldn't tell like up to what height she could wear it. So information, right? Or I couldn't see more images other than one in some cases. Like, I could find a product image. All of those things tie into SEO. So SEO is not just something you do so Google finds you. SEO is something you do so people find you. And that has been hopefully a massive shift in later years with all the developments from Google side as well, because for many years SEO was just, something you do to make your site rank. So Google likes it. But in reality, Google likes what people like. And it's as simple as that. So SEO now is no longer just, I used to imagine technical SEO as more like, I'm old enough to have watched all of X-Files. I imagine some of our audience probably too. But I imagine SEO is more like Mulder, in an office hidden somewhere. Yeah. It's no longer that. So SEO fits into how you manage your brand, how you manage your technical elements. Like, you have to offer a good experience. You have to have your information. You have to be there when people are not ready to buy, but they're researching, right? So if you're only interested, it's as if you're only interested in an analogical world, only when someone walks through your door, but not be interested in whether they've ever heard of your shop before. Yeah. So then you're kind of like the accidental seller. Someone was happening to pass by, they saw the door, they were kind of in the process of wanting to buy, and they stepped in. SEO is more about when they start even thinking about things, when they're starting to research things. Am I there? Can they see me? And that ties into 3 main areas. So, the technical parts of it, the content side of it, and then the authority you build around that, which is a whole topic around e-commerce and specifically what it means. But a common argument is like, if you're spending so much on ads, you could invest in your organic, and over time, this will keep giving. I'm not going to use that argument. I'm going to use the argument of like, where do you want to be in terms of whether people know you or not, and one that they think of when they're ready to buy.
I think there's a lot of snippets there, Erika, and I think that completely resonates. The example you gave of the sort of winter coat or a waterproof coat. We have several clients that sell a lot of outdoor, whether that's coats, boots, very high end and medium end, and a lot of outdoor camping and things like that. So when you're talking about those sort of informational searches, and if that information just isn't there and you can't make an informed decision, so if you're not, you in effect there, what we're saying is if you've not invested in, as an e-com store, you've not invested in content marketing or making sure that experience is giving the user, as you say, absolutely key. The user is you were looking to understand how long it was, how big it is, is it 2-layer, 3-layer layer? Is it going to be too hot in the summer? Then you think, I've got to buy another summer coat and that's going to cost this. So, those sort of things. So it's understanding those user journeys and the sort of questions. Obviously, that's doing the research with tools like SEMRush, etc., to see and understand those journeys and those search terms, but also the wider groupings for that particular product. Are you adding FAQs to those products about, and doing that research and understanding what is out there. So that's brilliant. So I think what we're saying is it's very important, and I did like the fact, if you are spending, let's take a random amount of money. If you're spending 20 grand a month on ads and you're not investing in SEO, you guys need to have a little word with yourself, I think, is the reality, because, you can very easily, take some of that budget and move it over. I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to our sponsors, Pricing. Now, Pricing is a competitor price tracking and monitoring software that can dynamically change a product's prices on all sales channels. They work with brands such as Samsung, Sony, Suzuki to increase their online revenue. Now, if you run Google Shopping, which I know a lot of you absolutely do, this software is absolutely key to accelerating profits. One of the reasons I recommend Pricing to my clients is because you can find out your competitors' pricing and stock availability all in one simple to understand dashboard, giving you a huge competitive advantage. Now, if you have any inquiries and questions about this software, or you're ready to get cracking, we have worked out a very, very special deal for our listeners where you can get a free month's trial and then 25% off for the first 3 months. Head to eComOne.com pricing and complete the inquiry form, and we will connect our listeners to the Pricing team. Right, let's head straight back to the episode. So, ChatGPT. Let's chat about that. We can't have a chat on SEO, I don't think, at the moment to do, well, AI specifically, really. But, how would you say ChatGPT is impacting sort of SEOs at the moment?
It goes beyond ChatGPT, right? It's a massive flux, like AI now being widely kind of accessible as well. And the impact is already massive, right? From having access to something that can massively widen your possibilities in terms of what's your output, how much can you create, how little knowledge you may have for something, but then you have like a powerful tool that can fill in those gaps for you through, scaling exponentially. All of that is now accessible to all of us. Like, AI is not a new thing, right? AI has been part of search and what we do for, I want to say a decade, but it has been around and has been powering a lot of things we see in Google as well for many years. The difference now is that, we're given tools like ChatGPT, for example, that make this accessible to us. It's no longer something running in the back end, an algorithm that no one understands, or, a machine learning system that we have nothing to do with. Right now, it's kind of like you can take it and use it in 1,000 different ways. So the main kind of like use cases I see in SEO is like using ChatGPT or similar language learning models and to create content, right? And to put a lot of content out there at scale. It's also to do research, whether it has to do with like data analysis, or it has to do with research to create content, or these are the main ones, but my kind of like caution moment here is that it's great to use it. It's a powerful tool. I think if you're in marketing, not just in SEO, if you're in marketing or online business in some form, and you haven't incorporated AI into your processes, you have already fallen behind, right?
Yeah.
Because it is something that can help you scale, or it can help you create things that previously would cost you much more money or time without that. But the caution is that you need to sort of be able to understand the limitations of tools like ChatGPT. And to do that, like, you do that because if you know that, for example, ChatGPT cannot give you keywords for keyword research, right? It says it can. You'll hear many people say, "Oh, I'm using it. It's the sphere, the space is now all. Here's my top prompts. Here's how I'm using it. Steal my how I work with ChatGPT." But the idea is that if you know what it can and cannot do, you can leverage the ones that actually will add value to your business. So my word of caution here is, understand the limitations of what a language model can do or what it cannot do. And that is know your gaps, know what you want to build with it. Once you understand what it can do well, right, then it's a massive, it's a power that is given to you to essentially free up your most valuable asset, which is your experts, your teams, their time to stop taking like hours or days on end to do something that it can be done much faster, but use them to review it. Don't just blindly trust what you see because it's not really the right output.
Yeah, I think that's a great sort of summary, because I think there's sort of two sides, isn't there? I think, like you say, you've got people that are not doing anything with it. Oh no, we're not using the AI, not using ChatGPT. It doesn't. The output's poor, and this, that, and the other. But the reality is, those that are leveraging AI, and obviously there's it's not just GPT. There's obviously literally hundreds every month get launched that are based on and using different APIs from different sources. But ultimately, the ones that are testing, trying, are getting leverage where they can produce, several thousand word document. Obviously, that can be a blog, that can be a guide, that can be anything you can think of, or a video, anything. That would take days and days to create. Now you can create, in maybe minutes or day, or an hour or a day, or a fifth of the time or whatever. But so what we're sort of saying, I think, is you've got to embrace it and leverage it, but at the same respect, you can't just let it go and do whatever it wants and just copy, paste and drop and use that content. You've got to be editing, checking and feeding it the right information in the first place. If you're just, like you say, just grabbing a few random keywords, chucking them in there and then telling it to write a blog post for 1,000 words on this, very basic prompt, and then copy and paste that, put that on the blog, that's a very, 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 very poor example of how to use AI. Whereas if you feed it...
sorry for interrupting you, Erika, but the analogy I use is, if you're baking a cake with a 5-year-old, right? Would you just give them the ingredients, right? And say, okay, now go bake a cake. And then whatever they brought to you, you would eat it as it is.
Yeah.
You don't trust a 5-year-old with the ingredients and an oven to do everything on their own. They have tons of creativity. They are there to help. You can have tons of fun. You can speed up in some aspects because you have another pair of hands, but you also have to train it. You have to be there to help and to review what is being done. Yeah. So I would never trust my 3-year-old now, but even I would never trust her and just give her, some ingredients and say, now go bake it on your own. I'm doing something else in the meantime. But and also we see the results of that because we've gone a bit crazy, I think, over the last year with how much content is put out there just through AI. Yeah. And we see how it's also like hard now of what search engines use as well, right? We know SGE, we know BARD, but we see a lot of volatility. We see a lot of content. We have helpful content updates. You see websites that, theoretically did a great job of creating a lot of content with AI. And then gradually we're getting to that point where that is not working. And we have to think, when you look into these examples, it's not really helpful content. So my question mark is, if humans were involved and if they were relevant, then probably that wouldn't have been the case. But just my tip about cooking with 5-year-olds,
No, that's a really good analogy, isn't it? A really good analogy. You wouldn't just leave them to it. And I think that's the reality of AI, and obviously that's a very broad stroke because there's a lot of different AI. But if you just, a very simple command and then taking the output and you're going, well, this AI is not very good. Well, it won't be because you're not spent time. You might have spent 3 days creating a good bit of content before you expect it to be completely finished in one click, So I think, we could probably do a separate episode on AI, I think, because it's, there's a lot to cover there, but I think, it's good to touch on it. But, so for the guys that are listening, they're obviously, the majority of them are e-com store marketeers, owners. What would you say to those guys that they're going to pause this episode after the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes and go and implement sort of 3 specific e-com SEO strategies? And if they happen to leverage SEMRush tech, that's a bonus, I guess. But what are 3 things that you see that, obviously you've worked agency side for many, many years, and obviously now at SEMRush for coming up to 4 years, but what are some maybe 3 specifics that you see that are going to get the most wins for the clients that are listening now and the listeners?
Okay. 3 things. Okay. So I will take it into categories of things. Yeah. One is in e-commerce, we see it all the time, technical and the technical infrastructure and setup of your website is important, right? So do not neglect that. The bigger your website, like Aleda and Mark Williams Cook and Aleda Solis have created a really simple but very efficient, very effective at demonstrating how in e-commerce, and the bigger your website, the importance of fixing technical issues is paramount, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, and theoretically simple things, but not simple at all, especially the bigger you get. But does your website structure make sense? Do you have the right product categories, right? Are they linking correctly? Is your navigation working properly? Like your canonicals, all of those things are technical, but they can make or break many things. Under another kind of like big part, I'm sorry if I'm not making it easy. I wish I had an answer like, do this and then it's fine.
No, that's fine. No, I think that's fine because, like you mentioned, the technical side, most people don't even touch it. That's and when you're staring at a store that's, 1,000 or 50,000 SKUs, you could spend months sorting out a technical, or a lot of time. Whereas people might just go, let's rewrite the product descriptions. Well, yeah, we maybe want to do that on 5% of your SKUs, but the reality is if your top 50 SKUs aren't getting indexed, or or they're not getting crawled very often, or the content that you're creating isn't actually getting indexed, there's a robots.txt issue that means that your blog's not getting indexed, or the certain basic site crawl issues that can usually be resolved quite quickly. We had a recent client come to us that's been with us not long, probably about 3.5 months now. And I can't remember the exact amount, but you're looking at about 180,000 SKUs, but about 20,000 SKUs were indexed. We'll fix that one issue and that one challenge. That's a 10% lift in index pages. It didn't correlate to 10% lift in sales, but it will in time correlate to a large chunk of revenue. But most people don't bother. Sorry, you carry on. So we did the technical bit.
I'm listening because I've seen it as well, but I think it's not that okay, let's see people who are on Shopify, right? Shopify by definition as a platform poses some specific technical challenges, right? And I don't expect that every business owner who has, setting up their online shop will have to know how to address all these issues. But, you can find really good technical support, resolve these things, make sure they're repeatable, scalable as well. Scalability is super important in e-commerce, and part of that comes from your technical setup. So it is important to take care of at all times. I think the biggest part falls under user experience. And there you have to consider, sure, some of it comes down to SEO. How fast are your pages? Do you have images that do not load fast and then everything breaks, right? Like what happens like if a product is out of stock, right? I've seen people from redirecting those pages to 404 those pages. And it's kind of like, okay, I came here to buy something. It's going to be here in a day, or it's going to get back at some point. So, and then the issues we see, with global commerce, I feel there's a rising level of mistrust. Like you see brands all the time, their ads on social media, on Google, selling apparently like seemingly great stuff. But what's the first thing you do? Is you check, are they shipping to where you are? Can you return it? How long will it take to get there? Do you have to pay separately for delivery? All of those trust signals are part of a wider user experience and the trust they build with you. So I feel like this is a huge asset if you're doing a good job at building that. Can they find what they need on those pages when they're looking for a product? So can they work with your website on mobile? Like that is paramount in e-commerce, right? So that kind of user experience, if I look online, remember that it's not just what you have on your website. If I look your brand online and like check for reviews, what people say, what am I seeing? Are you there? Are you answering those questions? So it goes even beyond your own website. And that is the third bigger thing for me is how do you build your brand? How do you build how people perceive who you are? Why they should trust you? Why should they choose you? Pricing is always important, of course, but we know that especially in particular like areas of e-commerce, people also tend to build loyalty, and that is built on some premise. But like even if I take Amazon, right, the giant of it, part of that trust is the ease of the whole experience, how easy it is to find something. Well, the trust that it will be delivered in the next hour if you need, and then you can return it easily, So user experience is beyond just SEO, is beyond just the content.
Yeah.
The overall experience you're offering and the brand you're building, the trust that people can place in you. I'm going to steal a bit and say a fourth one because it's entirely out of marketing, but I see this also connecting to the experience. It's your index, your actual product index, right? I feel like if we're talking about small, medium, scaling, maybe, part of why people search directly on some platforms for products has to do with a vast range of choices they're offered, right? So if you have a small product index, if products are out of stock and there's no way to keep them engaged, like bring them back, alert them, or something, then the message that goes there is like there's little value you can gain.
Yeah.
So if you're a niche, maybe in a very specific niche, or selling very specific types of products, work on that index, and I feel that relevance and that experience and rises, and that also moves the needle for your visibility.
That's a lot of things, Erika. I think that's So I try to think of like out of those things. I think there's a couple of actions there for our listeners now. If you were to go to Google and just search for your brand, look at that top 10 listing and see what is coming up. Obviously, your website's going to come up, probably some of your categories, some of your key social media pages should come up if you're running them. And if you're not, you should be, that's the brand. It's an element of the brand. Have you got any where are you mentioned, and what does it say? And obviously, if it's not 100%-ish positive, bar the odd review, because we can't please everybody, but then you need to own that space. So if you're not owning the top 10 of Google with your own brand term, that's not always possible, depending on the niche you're in, but quite often it should be. What can you do about that? And that might be as simple as, do you know what, we don't have any third-party review information, so working with a review company, again, reviews quite often it's surprising how many companies just don't use a trusted review source or just a review platform, tech stack, working on that. But then the other one, I think you mentioned a lot of things, but the one that always just grates me is when something goes out of stock on a website and then they delete the product off the website, and it's just like you've spent 3 years trying to rank that product and that category and you've just removed it and it's probably coming back in stock. So it's like, what to do when a product, sounds like a film, what to do when a product goes out of stock. But
dissolving that ambiguity, right? When you see out of stock, do you know if it will be back? For me, it's implying that it will be back, right? It doesn't say discontinued, for example, right? So it's resolving that ambiguity for users.
Yeah, and you're missing, if somebody lands on that page and it is out of stock, just by a simple message to say this will be in, it's tying into your purchase orders. This will be in on the 5th of the month, or this is out of stock. However, we have these similar products, and then they click, they're buying something else. But to remove that URL, that's like one of the top 5 SEO sins, I think. A bit like the Black Friday, but we're going to be days away from Black Friday when this episode airs, and every year it comes around like Christmas, Black Friday, and every year they go, we need to launch a page on Black Friday. Well, no, you don't. You need to use the page that you used last year and build and build and build and build on that page. And you've got a page that's got, in time, 5-10 years worth of authority in your niche. You're going to outrank all these guys that are starting afresh every year, updating, refreshing, updating the date clearly, because obviously each year the year changes and whatnot. But again, that's quite some easy sort of bits there. But yeah, the UX piece, I think, obviously ultimately. The tech piece, and then that brand piece, that's some nice tips there, plenty to go at. So you might want to pause the episode, rewind back, as my children say. Can you rewind back, or can you rewind forward? It's like, what's that about? Yeah. So thank you for that. So I think budgets is a good one to talk about. So a lot of companies, a lot of changes in budget, a lot of different departments fighting for budget. And ultimately, our listeners sitting there as marketing managers for e-com stores or owners of e-com stores, sorry, what would you say to them about trying to grow their SEO budget? What should they be thinking about, and why should they invest more in SEO?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's an interesting question, because I don't think there's one approach. I can tell you what my approaches have been in the past that I've seen work. One is you have to know what is more valuable on your website, right? Especially when we're talking about e-commerce, there is probably a good chunk of your website that is not producing the results it needs to be producing. And then the biggest value comes from, I'm not going to say the 80-20 kind of principle, but in e-commerce, it can easily be the case. So what you do is you know exactly where to look, you monitor, and then you make the ones that have value produce more value. You test. You don't allow that to drop below a point. Of course, you monitor, but then you build on them. Are the ones that have the best conversion rates, or they're the most searched, right? The most popular categories or products. Are they ranking well? Are they bringing in enough traffic? If not, I would work on them first, because then the actual value for a business, which is the revenue, for example, right? That can be visible the moment you solve those issues. That then gets you buy-in to work on the rest of it, right? You cannot, I think, especially if you're limited for resources, if you say I'm going to work on everything, right? And I'll see what works, that requires budget. You're not going to get it from the start. And then you somehow have to prove that all of it will produce results, which sometimes I admit, I've admitted many times, I don't know necessarily. So the more kind of risky decisions is for later when you have the buy-in. You start by what you know will have those results. Another one that I'm using is that if you have a hypothesis, right, you test it first at small scale as a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
E-commerce has a lot to do with conversions and optimizing your pages. So you run small scale tests to prove or disprove a hypothesis, which helps you create that incremental change and impact.
Yeah.
Which then you can group under, okay, this is a smaller impact, so it worked. So now I can
scale.
Amplify. And the third thing, especially in e-commerce, I don't want it to come across the wrong way, but especially in e-commerce, I see great opportunities for partnerships and collaborations, right? It's one problem to not have tons of budget. But trust me, having big budgets sometimes is a bigger problem. So you have to change your mindset a bit and think of okay, for example, influencers, right? You don't need those top influencers that request tons of money. You will probably be doing a great job and have great results with micro or even nano influencers who are very relevant to your audience, right? And there's tons of opportunities because they are also very invested in what they do. And they're experts and they have great knowledge. There are potentially other brands that, your offerings are complementary, that you can collaborate together to produce something that can get the word out and build that brand and that, word of mouth around your brand. So I would say, don't be discouraged. If the budgets are small, start with what is important for the business, right? Prove the value there. Then test concepts, test and prove incremental impact. So then you can scale. And the third is look for opportunities outside your own brand and your own business, because your audience is not just sitting around where you are. They're probably conversing, searching, interacting elsewhere. Where is that elsewhere? And what are the opportunities there? Because then you're front of mind when they are there and they see you collaborating there or public.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Erika. That is brilliant. I think particularly poignant when you think about e-commerce store and testing. There's always, usually a lot of categories, subcategories of products. So if you're taking a certain area that you've got, stock in, good terms on, you're maybe ranking reasonably well already, to shift a group of key terms and phrases and, in a category of products or subcategory of products, and work on that category structure for 1, 2, 3 categories, test budget, test, budget for content, budget for technical, and then you see a certain lift in a certain category, subcategory. That's exactly how we do it. It's like I primed you with that question, because that's exactly how we do it. That's exactly how we do and demonstrate, potential forecast to a client. Look at 2, 3, 4 categories depending on budgets. This is the average grouping of the keywords. If we can shift that average by X, and to do that, we need to work on the category, layering in. That's the word. Layering in different content elements to the categories, subcategories, FAQ, creating guides, buyer's guides, maybe content around video and YouTube, and so on and so on and so on, linking to 3,000 word blog posts and so on and so on in a category environment. You prove that in a category that, you can add in 3 months 10% to, or obviously it depends on the size of the organization and where you are. That's quite a nice test, and then obviously depending on the scale of the business, if we were to do X, Y, Z over the next 6, 12, 18 months, you can build that hypothesis, that forecast with a bit more reliability if you've done that 3-month test in the first place. So yeah, brilliant. I think it would be nice if you could share sort of some of the focuses for SEMRush over the coming year. Obviously I know we'll have a lot of listeners that use SEMRush, and I know, literally not half my team, but quite a lot of my team use the different products, and we're in it daily. But in terms of, what can you share in terms of where, as a company, you guys are focusing the next 12 months?
Okay. So we are continuing to invest across the platform. We are investing heavily in AI as well. How does that power our data, our tools? We're continue to do that. I think we said it at the start, but like right now there's over 50 tools probably in the platform, and there's more apps in the app center. So we're continuing to build apps to target and to help with specific needs that people have. So, for example, something that may be relevant to our audience here is there's already, I counted before this podcast, so I'm not going to pretend I had this in front of me. But it's like we have over 15 apps right now for eCommerce, right? And the investment into addressing specific needs with specific tools or specific ads will continue, and we'll continue to do that. So I would put it into like continue to invest in our data and AI, and then continue to invest in solving specific pain points or giving specific capabilities. I think that sounds more positive through apps in our app center. Exciting.
I'll be keeping an eye out. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Do you have a book to recommend to our listeners and viewers, Erika?
I can tell you the one I'm reading now. I hope people find it as good as I am so far. So I'm reading Perna Virji's High Impact Content Marketing. So yeah, so it's a book that's relatively new. It was out a few months ago, written by Perna, who obviously is one of the biggest minds in content marketing, and she's writing some really good stuff about what your content needs to have to perform, and give some great advice. So brilliant. I haven't finished it yet, but so far I would recommend.
So far, so good. Yes. Right, we'll get that on the list. We'll add that to the shopping list internally, and we'll link that up in the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Erika, for coming on the show. For those that want to find out more about yourself, more about SEMRush, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they can look us up on all social media platforms, pretty much on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. They can look at our website, so SEMRush.com, and they can shoot me a message. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Bizarrely, for an SEO, I'm told I should be on Twitter more, but so yeah, they can find me and SEMRush on all those platforms.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I look forward to having a catch up with you in probably 12 months, and we'll chat more on the new tools that are coming out and the new developments on AI and eCom. Wow. Yeah. Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. You're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.